But so people really freak out about networking. People freak out about kind of this, and it's a lot of it is just sort of one, having the credentials, like having the goods to kind of back yourself up, but also it's about connecting and sort of just telling your story, right? Kind of came to UNC, pursuing this strong business school, and coming here. This is what I've been doing to achieve my goals. I think that's a perfect approach. So great job, Beckett, for kicking us off. But yeah, so Thomas, I'll turn to you, or we can do more intros. We're ready when you are.
Yeah, I mean, I can give my intro. So, hey everyone, I'm Thomas. I'm a senior at Keenan Flagler right now. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, but came to UNC as a transfer student. I transferred from UT Dallas, so I was in Texas for a year. But career-wise, professional-wise, I was a sophomore intern at UBS in their industrials group, and last summer I was at Goldman in their natural resource group, which I'm returning to the group full time. So, if you have any questions about Goldman, banking, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Great job, guys. I think, do you want, I mean, how do you want to start this? Like, do you want me to, I usually have a way we just go in and start with my intro and go through that, but is there anything you guys want to say? I assume these are like, but I'll say this, I think UNC, Thomas and Jacques, having gotten to know them a little bit the last year, doing a tremendous job of sort of bringing sort of that professionalism, to the school and to the society. Because I think a lot of you guys actually I've seen in a lot of the Elevate events with some more professionals, and you're asking great questions and sort of all that. So I think it really helps, when you have mentors like this, but also being parts of these programs. And really, the goal you all should have, one is to, improve your own candidacy, but number two is to kind of put the best, foot forward for UNC as well as a brand, right? In terms of nationally. So I think you guys are doing a great job of doing that. Excited to be here. I'd say, we've done plenty of these this semester already because of the impending recruiting season, right? For a lot of our sophomores and juniors, and for our freshmen as well. So excited to kind of speak to you guys. I think we'll try to cover a lot today. It just ends up being kind of a lot of content. That said, I do want to keep it interactive, like I did with Beckett and some of the folks here. So let's just sort of get your questions going. I'll give you guys a little bit overview of my own background, and that might help you all kind of ask your questions that way as well. So anything, Thomas and team, you guys want to start off with before I jump into this?
Nothing in particular on my end. What about you, Jacques?
Yeah, all good. We can roll with you, Kaushik.
Perfect. Cool, guys. All right. So I'll share a couple slides and we'll go from there. So today we're primarily going to spend a lot of time on recruiting and career success. Obviously that's a lot, but kind of the mentality and the whole process, right? So what does it take to be successful? What are we looking for? What you should all be doing at every step of the process. Give you guys a quick view of my background. I started my career, I spent 6 years at Goldman Sachs, started in an investment banking group in financial services, and kind of taking you back to where I started. I actually went to a non-target undergrad, and I ended up kind of having a little bit of a rough start to my career. And sort of one of the lessons learned, I think I learned early on, is that sort of perseverance and kind of that attitude about, all right, I'm going to keep going and whatever, because I graduated in the financial crisis, I guess a little bit after the last financial crisis. And the job market was just really, really hard at that point. So you had to really find a way to make inroads into Wall Street and try to figure this out. And so that's probably my first lesson learned, is that even if you feel like, oh, that's not the summer internship I wanted to get into, or it's not the full-time job I want to get into, it is a journey, right? So kind of putting yourself in that position to be successful every step of the way. The second thing that's helped me a lot in my career, I think I'd say, is introspection and sort of figuring out why are we pursuing the things that we're doing, right? And I think in life and in your career, it comes down to three things. Are you advancing the ball? Are you pursuing an opportunity because, number one, it's giving you a really strong skill set, or making you do something that you want to become better at, or you are good at that thing, so you're doing that. So number one is a skill set. Number two, is it allowing you to pursue a passion or interest of yours? So I really love technology, or I really love investing, or I really love, entrepreneurship or whatever. So is it allowing you to pursue your interest? And then number three, is it giving you the definition of success and impact that you want? So I just want to make the most money, or I just want to become very senior, but I'm really, really young. I want to impact all these different people growing up. Like whatever that definition of impact is, you should be doing that. So to me, try to have those three sort of guiding stars as you go through your career. What are you good at, your skill set, or what are you improving? What is your interest or passion, industry or type of job or type of people, et cetera? And how do you make an impact, or how do you measure success? If you do that, your career journey will start becoming a lot more like, I love going to work, or I love doing what I'm doing and I'm really good at it. So after banking, so I started at Goldman Investment Banking Group. The cool thing, the third question people ask me is like, how do I pick the industry group that I want to get into? There's no science behind this. For me, it was picking the area that I was interested in, but also number two, I thought was transformative to the industry, right? Coming out of the financial crisis, the financial services industry was being the most transformative, right? Transformed. And part of it's today too, as well, right? With fintech and all these things. So I started in FIG. And so what that got me was that I ended up leading 3 of the largest deals that GS led, right? Post-financial crisis. I led the IPO of Synchrony, which is the largest IPO since Facebook that we worked on. I led the split up of Synchrony as well, which is $25-ish billion deal. And then $100 billion divestiture of G Capital. So again, put yourself in positions to be successful. The reason I got staffed on those deals was that I just did a really, really good job as my first year, right? Just really, really blocking and tackling and getting like all the little things right, such that you build up a reputation of being a top performer, right? That's the next thing I'll say as far as another lesson learned is if you guys, wherever you start off, I highly suggest you start off or find opportunities for yourself or firms or groups, et cetera, that gives you a lot of real deal experience, right? So if you kind of go into a group where there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of, inbound deal activity, there's a lot of project-based work, that's way more important in terms of experience building, because the further you go away from North Carolina, or the further you go away from your first job, JP Morgan, Goldman, Evercore, any of these firms, all of the emphasis is going to be on what are the types of projects that you worked on, right? We wouldn't even care as much if you were at a certain firm. It'd be like, what are the deals you worked on? So start building that track record, really, really important for you. And then maybe another thing I'll highlight, in addition to, so I started in banking, then I transitioned to private equity. I know a lot of our students, even prior to the session, emailed me a lot about private equity. Look, you just got to figure out if that's something you want to do. And again, if you're going to be good at it, and if that's something you want to do. So I joined Goldman's own private equity group. This is pre a lot of the reorg that's happened since then, but we have a $100 billion fund within GS, sort of like, it is a mega fund, large cap buyout fund, and a growth equity business. So I joined as an associate, made vice president, principal there. And then I had an opportunity, I spent 6 years at Goldman, and then I had an opportunity to join another firm as a director to build out their PE business. At that point in my career, it was sort of a no-brainer, right? To take on a director role when I was in my mid to late 20s. And so, it's been cool. It's been just a really good ride. I think, so I'll come back to those private equity and banking specific points. The other thing I'll say is try to take on leadership roles wherever you can. For me, that meant like, how can I make an impact at Goldman when I was there? And so I was asked to kind of take on a bunch of leadership roles, including chief of staff within our investment banking FIG group, leading associate recruiting teams, analyst recruiting teams, summer committees, et cetera. So again, it's sort of a great way to build your own brand, right, in the industry and within the firm. And ultimately, industry is all about sort of your personal brand. And so we'll come back to that. Okay, so that brings me to Elevate, why we're here today. Also in 2019, in addition to PE, I started this thing called Elevate, which I wanted to basically build a best-in-class network of individuals, professionals, and now students interested in private equity, investment banking, hedge funds, venture capital, growth equity, fintech type careers. Did not expect it to grow like it did in the last year and a half, 2 years. Right now, I'd say we're partnered with 100 plus student organizations like North Carolina's Finance Society, across the top 30 or so universities, as well as all the kind of top 12 MBA programs, and everything in between, right? So kind of you guys all see all the undergraduate programming, my MBAs see all the MBA programming, all of our bankers see all our banker programming. So the goal is a career-long network that you can take advantage of at every point in your career, right? You as a student are going to have completely different challenges than someone who's a senior or junior who has their job already and I was looking to sort of figure out what to do. Then my bankers have a completely different challenge of how do I figure out what to do with my life now that I'm in banking. My PE people have a completely different challenge of saying, I want to go to business school. How do I do that? Right. So every single point in your career, I think we need resources, guidance, networks, and advice, I suppose. So we wanted to build that out. We also want to build it out 100% by professionals. You guys will see a lot more stuff if you haven't already. I know a bunch of you have already come to a lot of these events, but really, can we bring on professionals? Like for me, it's really, really hard to build mentors. It was really hard to build networks. And that's why I had to go and sort of, go get an MBA. But I feel like with some of these things, it should be a lot easier to build your own networks. It should be a lot easier to connect with other people, learn from other people, etc. So as part of that, we have networking platform, learning platform, recruiting platform, and a soon to come investing platform. Maybe not as relevant for you guys, but definitely more interesting for my private equity and bankers. So let's keep this moving. These are some examples. I think Thomas and Jacques can give you guys way more of the details behind where to find some of this stuff. I can send that as well. But like we probably have events with top firms every other week at this point. Just depends if you're interested in banking or PE or growth equity or whatever, check that out. One thing I will point out while we're here is this is a cool resource that I think I want everyone here to take advantage of. This is our database of advice. So if you're like, hey, I'm really interested in, I don't think the search function is working right now, but they're fixing it. But if you're like, I'm really interested in Goldman, I'm really interested in Oaktree, I'm really interested in Warburg Pincus, Apollo, Blackstone, whatever the firm you're interested in. The number one thing I hear from our students or our MBAs is like, oh, it's too hard to connect with people in the industry. Like it's too hard to not even connect. It's really hard to like learn about what are the keys to success in an industry. So we try to just break this down for you guys. And you're saying, all right, I want to go to this firm. I think the search thing's not working, but you can kind of say like, what is the interview process at Warburg Pincus and what are the 3 skills that you need? Okay, if you are by chance interested in growth equity, you can click on this and learn about someone at Warburg Pincus telling you about what you need to know to get into that firm. So my point is, I think it's huge because we don't have time. These are all 2 or 3 minute videos. I just wanted to share with you guys that I want to make these things accessible and democratize, right? Access to this. Just because you go to this school versus that school shouldn't preclude you to try to kind of pursue the careers that you want to pursue, right? So I think we try to democratize access to a lot of that. You guys will get info on that later, I'm sure. Upcoming events, I'm going to share this with the team. And if my team might have already shared this with you guys, we're having on Wharton and a few speakers from Blackstone, Goldman next week. Then we're going to have a couple events. We have a diversity actually panel in 2 weeks, which we're going to have 2 people from Goldman incoming, Morgan Stanley, Evercore, some of those firms. Again, if people are interested, take advantage of these things because they're just people coming and sharing what worked for them in the process. Okay, so in terms of, is there chat stuff? Sorry, it will be an email. Oh, sorry, forget this. Okay, cool. Thank you for taking care of that. All right, let's start with finding the right career for you. By the way, stop me and ask questions, right? Because I'm going to keep going. Like we have a ton of slides that I can get through all the way from banking to PE. But if there's something specific you want to know, right, stop me and we'll make it even more, interactive. So I'd say there's 5 of the major careers that I see within Elevate. Like obviously I see 100 students, 100 clubs, right? And we see about 10 to 20,000 students every year for now, I think, and growing. And so if I were to characterize what are the 5 most popular areas, this would be the 5. So number 1, investment banking. I'd say about 45 to 55% of our students in any given year go into investment banking. By the way, I speak fast, one from being in the industry for a while, but also like I just have a lot to get done. So if you want me to slow down, just tell me and I will try to slow down. The crux of the job in investment banking is client advisory and execution, right? So as a junior person, you're working on a bunch of complex transactions, M&A deals, IPOs, capital raises, debt transactions, split offs, bankruptcies, et cetera. And you really build a deep financial skill set. You also build an understanding of industries because, if you go into an industry for a couple of years, like whether it's FIG or, NR or healthcare, sort of you're building a skill set in that industry that will make you, better fit for exit opportunities, right? Coming out of that industry, right? So sort of it helps you build this financial skill set. As you progress, there's more emphasis on sort of client relationships, deal execution, et cetera. I think you just have to really, if you are going into banking, try to figure out early on if you want to stay in it or you want to sort of use it as a platform to do something else. The reason I say that is the natural inclination for all of our students is I want to go into banking and I just want to use that as a platform to go into private equity. And I think that's okay. But what I found, and I'm giving you guys this as advice, is only about 50% of my people that go into private equity are actually good at it. And only about 50% of them actually stay after 2 years. And so in a sense, I don't want you to sort of waste 2 years of your life without having been very thoughtful about if you really want to do this and if you're going to be good at it, right? So try to figure out for yourself what you want to use that for. Private investing, that's probably, I'd say 25 to 30% of my audience goes into private investing. This is mostly private equities, a little bit private credit, but mostly private equity. There's obviously a huge influx of analyst programs now within private equity that a lot of people are thinking about. The crux of the job in PE is very different from IB, right? Here you are an investor, right? You are an owner. You're trying to find an edge, right, in sort of having access to private information and making an investment in a company. As far as day-to-day, you guys might be working on 2 to 3 deals over a course of a year versus working on 10 to 15 deals in banking. Again, that's just a function of depth versus breadth. And, that's kind of the nature of the job. And then for you all, it's the keys to find the right fit fund, right? Even if this PE is something you do after you go into banking, the key is to find the right fund, the right fit firm. Every firm's different, unlike banking, where I think most of the experiences are the same and you really only differentiate based on your deals. In PE, there's a lot more differentiation at that junior level. And the focus is both financial and operational. Okay, so you'll have an ability to sit on boards. You'll have the ability to kind of run operations for your portfolio companies. Okay, the alignment on this slide is really annoying me. Okay, so then the growth equity and venture capital is the next career that is probably about 10% of our audience goes into. It's popular, but right out of undergrad, not as popular because there's just a lot fewer opportunities within VC. Growth equity is popular, but I think, if anyone was on, I think some of you were on the TPG growth session we had last week. I think those are the types of firms where a lot of our undergrads go into, less so to like the VC type of firms. And the difference between VC and PE is, or growth and PE is it's earlier stage and it's usually non-majority, right? It's usually like sub 50% investment in the company. And due to the investing style, this is important. People always ask me, I want to go to the buy side. I'm like, well, I don't even know what that means because there's so many things you could be talking about, right? So do you want to do private investing or public investing? Do you want to do late stage or, earlier stage? Do you want to do large cap or middle market? Or do you want to do industry or generalist? So there's just a lot, right? So get informed, right? Before you have these conversations with people. But really growth equity is about, what is your decision-making criteria that makes you confident that you can invest in companies in the earlier stage of their cycle, right? Versus PE, it's late stage, so you have more data. Anyway, if folks have questions on this, we'll come back to that. It's not really the goal of today's session. There's also hedge funds and public investing. I'm not going to cover hedge funds. We've had on firms like multiple Citadel events, all these events. You can go check that out. All those are on YouTube, so you can go check them out. And then consulting strategy. I'm not going to go into this. Obviously, we have had on McKinsey and some of these other firms. You can go on and check those on as well. If you have specific questions, I can answer them. But consulting is more strategy, operations based in a client service role. Okay, we'll keep it moving. What are all the things you should be doing? And I think Beckett, you kicked us off here. What are the things you should be doing as a freshman versus all the way to sort of a senior? Look, if you're a first year, I think things that Beckett talked about, right? First of all, you don't have to have an investment banking internship, or you don't have to have a blah, blah, blah internship. Just get an internship that gives you some exposure for the summer to something in the business world. What I want to really have you spend time on is start understanding industry, start understanding how the markets work. Basically the first question is figure out if finance is a place you want to be in. My intent in coming and doing these and talking to a lot of the underclassmen is actually to free you of this bondage, this mental bondage you have that I have to go into this industry. What I'm trying to tell you is take the time to figure out if that's the right industry for you and then go into it. That is the much better approach than just doing it because Jacques is doing it or Thomas is doing it or whoever else is doing it, right? So I think figure out if that's the right solution for you and what you want to get out of it. And then once you have that, really crush the process, because this process favors people who are prepared earlier on, right? If they're the people who are networking earlier on, building these experiences and so on. And so what I mean by that is exploration that we've talked about, doing well at your university, just getting good grades, that's important. And number 3, being involved on campus, get involved in the finance society, get involved in other things and show leadership, right? So when I see 100 resumes from UNC, how am I going to know the difference between Jacques and Thomas and whoever is, all right, they're great. They all have 3-point whatever at UNC, but what are they doing that differentiates them versus someone else? And that's where I rely on leadership a lot. The other thing, like I said, getting first year job. The second year is where it gets really tricky, right? So a lot of the folks on this call have been through it from the leadership side, but this is when you need to start building your network, right? And it's sort of, there's multiple avenues to do this, and we can talk about all that. But the key is, how can you get a few people at the firms that you're looking out for to get jobs at to vouch for you, and they know who you are. So networking is just a fancy way of getting people to know who you are and building relationships with them, right? So that's kind of what networking ends up being. So if you're a second year sitting in the seat right now, I think you should you should sort of get yourself in a position where you can start building networks. UNC alums are great, consult with your seniors who are probably, great role models on the networking piece. You can ask them what worked, what didn't in this process, and just get sort of your muscles working on terms of the networking side. We'll come back to that. And then you're going to right now start, in the next couple months, start recruiting and actually interviewing for the job. So just being ready for that. One little thing that's important in there is your sophomore year internship. So just if you don't have one yet, try to allocate maybe 30 to 40% of your time to try to get that internship so that at least you have something on paper before you launch onto your sort of full-time summer recruiting process. I'm not going to cover the upperclassmen because I don't think we have a ton of upperclassmen in the audience today, but we're going to have sessions later this fall where we're going to invite back summer interns to talk about what made them get their return offers, what do they do at their firms, et cetera. So you guys can be a part of that. We're also going to have the private equity panel, venture capital panel for our seniors to think about what they want to do later on. We're also going to have multiple top PE firms come on and talk about their platforms. So again, there's a lot of opportunities for the upperclassmen. So I'm not going to do that a lot right now. All right, recruiting. Recruiting key principles. I'm going to keep pausing for questions, but if I don't see hands, I'm going to keep going. The recruiting in terms of what I think are the 5 key principles of recruiting are as follows. Number 1, university. I would say UNC has a good presence. It's not like every bank comes on campus, but there's a good amount of banks that come on campus or firms that come on campus that you can really leverage. So to me, it's 2 buckets. Firms come on campus, get to know the team. They usually have exclusively recruiting teams and get to be in the process. Firm does not come to campus, figure out a way. Reach out to whatever element you could find. LinkedIn, UNC alumni database. I don't care how you do it. It's almost like, you just do it, right? And just build that. So, right, it's a double-edged sword, right? Firms that come on campus, they're going to be more competition, and firms that don't come on campus, you have a lot harder, like higher barrier to entry. But if you enter, sort of lesser competition, presumably, right? So I think, and for UNC, I would say you guys should reach out to large cap firms, but I also think you should reach out to regional firms, right? There's a ton of Atlanta-based firms like SunTrust and Raymond James, and there's a bunch of really top shops that are in the Southeast that I think you guys will have, especially for your sophomore year internship or your junior year internship. Those are like great places to sort of build that, experience and say, hey, I've done investment banking, so I'm like good to kind of go forward into New York if that's where you want to be. That's my third point here. Sort of just build an experience, right? Like find a way to get a job in some industry and sort of make that transition ladder up. It's important that they don't need to all be in banking or PE, but I think it's important for them to sort of progress in a way, right? Hey, I worked in business operations my freshman year, then I worked in sort of FP&A or M&A my sophomore year. I worked in, sourcing my freshman year, then I worked on the deal side my sophomore year. So show some sort of progression that tells me that, hey, this person is actually serious about these jobs and go on. And then show me a little bit of relevance. It doesn't have to be, banking, hedge fund banking, and then get to your job. It sort of can be like, look, I worked at a startup and it was venture backed. And so now I know about sort of how that process works. So I want to be the person providing capital or whatever. So as long as there's sort of progression to where you want to be, I think that's fine. Networking, we'll get into a little bit more. Again, important. We'll talk about why people are so nervous about networking and also talk about why networking is a career long thing. Just because you have a job already lined up does not mean you stop networking. In fact, I think it's crazy to stop networking when you just have a job, because then you waste 2 years of your college not building any relationships, right? So I personally, which is why I think we built Finact and all these things, is because, people have this view that networking you only do when you're in the recruiting process. And yes, you do it in a more intense manner, but your whole career is network capital, right? That's all it is, like who that's it. Especially as you get more and more senior. So just really important to focus on that. But as it relates to recruiting, networking is a very structured process. You reach out to a group of people, a small subset of them respond to you, you build connectivity with them, establish rapport, set up a conversation, make a good impression, and then hopefully that you do that with enough people at the firm that you have 2 to 3 people like banging the floor saying, hey, I want Jacques, or I want, Beckett or whatever at my firm. And then that gets you in the process, right? So that's kind of how networking works. We'll get into sort of my tips on networking in a second. And then interviewing, like this is hard. Like it's not hard, like in the sense that it's impossible, but it's a lot of different things coming together, right? So just being organized around this stuff and sort of, being in control of it and sort of not getting it frustrate you is the hard part. Again, the process is not hard. You all will be successful, but the going through the motions of the process, being okay with rejection, being okay with uncertainty, being okay with ambiguity is what makes it a little bit more challenging. Okay, what firms, we may not have time to go through all these slides ad nauseum, but this is one slide. So we asked, I think about like 40 to 50 of our current bankers and sort of PE people who are in banking who did recruiting for their firms, like, what are you looking for? Like when you get a resume to your table, like what differentiates someone, or when you get someone to reaching out to you, and it kind of landed on these 9 things. It's just a combination. How we evaluate you all is, one, we evaluate on your resume, we evaluate on your LinkedIn, we evaluate you on your conversations, your outreach emails, and then we evaluate you obviously on the interviews, right? On kind of how you guys doing those things. So these 9 boxes, you could check in any of those ways. Number 1 is analytical ability. Number 2 is technical exposure. Again, whether you take a business course or in a business major is one thing, but there's multiple ways you can prove this, right? Hey, I did this internship, or I did this experience. I did, as part of UNC Finance Society, I've been tracking a bunch of stocks, and this is what analysis I'm working on here. So again, prove it in different ways. Jacques, I'll get you in just 1 second. You can leave it raised, but I'll just give you 1 second. Then the third thing is teamwork, which is, can this candidate excel as an individual contributor, right? At the end of the day, when you're a junior person in a high pressure team, you're going to be given a lot of work. Like my first year analysts are swamped, starting week 3 until month 10, right? Or month 12 until they get summer interns. So can you handle that sort of environment and be a strong contributor to the team? So when people need you to work on something, and can you do it at the same time? Can you be a really strong individual performer, right? Nothing in banking, yes, we have templates for stuff, but it's not like you're ever building the same model ever again. Everything you do is something new. So like, how can you handle new things? How quick a learner are you, and so on and so forth. Leadership, drive, initiative. I like seeing this. I think a lot of the interviews that I do focuses on the next 2 bullets here. What drives a candidate? What we want to know is, this person is passionate about something. It doesn't have to be business. It could be that, hey, I was a swimmer my whole life. And so I woke up and did 3 hours of swimming practice every day in high school. Or it could be, I started this club at UNC, and this is how it's grown. Whatever it is, I want to sort of figure out what drives you and what have you been doing in order to kind of demonstrate that drive. Okay. So that's sort of what I'm trying to get to in that bullet. Character. Again, any interview that when we train our interviewers at Goldman and other places, I would say, look, we got to ask them 3 or 4 weakness questions. Okay. Cause we want candidates who are very self-aware of what their weaknesses are and sort of can work on it, because guess what? We would have so many different ways to give feedback at GS. And if that person is not able to sort of acknowledge and analyze it, then there's no room for growth. So if I see someone in an interview kind of saying, oh, my biggest failure is sort of like that I took on, I took on 5 different things, and they all end up doing great. I'm like, well, that's not a failure. You're just bragging about something, right? So just maybe tell me, a time where you didn't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, and why. What have you learned from that thing? So I think just important for you guys to think about that. Interest in finance markets. Again, I won't belabor these points. Communication. All right, before we jump into this stuff, I think there was questions. So Jacques, what's up?
Yeah, sorry, if you could maybe just jump back to slide 13 real quick. It was frozen, at least for me.
Oh,
sure.
sure.
The majority of the time. So if we could
okay, sure.
Just give like a few seconds for people to read the slide.
Yeah, that's an example of a time I should have stopped for.
We didn't want to interrupt you. You were kind of doing your thing there.
No, you're good. So hold on, let me share the screen. By the way, most of my other schools, I think all of my other schools wanted me to, where is this page?
It was slide 13, the one after this.
Okay, what are firms looking for? This one?
14, yeah.
Okay, cool. So by the way, I think every school wanted to see this slides as a PDF. So if it's helpful, I can send you this stuff. Everyone in the audience, the slides themselves. But if not, it's fine. I think so. The resume. Okay, so the next thing is resume building. Again, back at I'll use an example since you already kind of spoke. I think for you, right, what you're going to run into is sort of probably having too much on your resume, right? You'll probably have a spring internship, a winter internship, a summer internship, and something else. So I'm giving you an example because I you've already told me 3 things you're doing, right? So I think one thing for you to focus on maybe would be, if you accumulate a lot of sort of experiences, I would sort of pick the 2 or 3 that are most relevant and really go into a little bit more depth, right? So that's just a strategy. It's not the only strategy, but kind of, I like, if I get 300 resumes from a school, physically, I can't spend more than 40 seconds on a resume, right? Because it just would take too long to go through all of them. And I want to do the same thing that I do for an A as a Z, you know, because we have 300 resumes in a resume book. So I think just, if I can see a resume and I can read the left 3 words of every bullet and understand what you've done, then you've accomplished your job, right? So, you know, led financial modeling, or, you know, built due diligence packet, or, you know, presented to management, like things like that. I'm like, boom, 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 got it, right? So don't wait till the end of the sentence to tell me what you did, right? So that's like one strategy that I can tell you guys. The other one is sort of bolding a couple things and things like that, where you want to kind of highlight what you did, making it relevant, right? So a lot of people sort of undersell what they did. Again, don't lie or don't say things that you haven't done. But, you know, a lot of people put, for instance, this is a great example. They would put 3 bullets on built, you know, DCF model, built comparable company analysis, and blah, 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 liquidation model, and then built blah, blah, blah. And then that's 3 great things as far as like technical thing goes. And then I speak to them, or I ask them in an interview, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what? I also like presented this. I was like, what did you do all these models? And they're like, oh yeah, I presented it to the CEO and it was great. I was like, well, rather than spending 3 bullets on the same exact point, which is your financial analytics, put a bullet in there about the fact that you presented to the CEO. That's something I want to know, right? Or the management team or something. So make sure you're able to provide this full picture about yourself, rather than just wanting to communicate one aspect of it just because you think that aspect is more valuable, right? So shorten that technical bullet to say, hey, I've done M&A modeling, liquidation analysis, merger, comps analysis, and LBO analysis. Also, you know, presented results to CEO and management team and got good results, and da. So just show me that aspect of yourself that I'm like, okay, cool, this is a more fulsome candidate, right? Again, that's just one example. Okay, networking, I think we hit on this a little bit. I will just go through this. All right. The other big trepidation everyone has is, how do I network? Where do I start? You know, how intense do I have to be? So I'll try to demystify that for you guys. The first place I'll go with this is that networking is kind of what you make of it. Okay. If you kind of think of it, it's like pulling teeth and you're like, oh my God, I have to network with 10 people every day. I hate this. Then you're going to hate the process and it's going to suck. And you might be successful, but you may not be as sort of long-term ROI as if you kind of just embrace the process and be like, look, I'm going to do what works for me. Just because Thomas is out here, and it's not Thomas, it's not his style, but let's say let's just because Thomas is out here bombing 100 bankers every day, like doesn't mean I need to do the same thing. So what is working for me? Maybe a more personal connection is what's working for me. So let me reach out to 5 people and make those emails good. You know what I mean? So I think whatever works for you is what you should be doing. But at the same time, know that it's a hustle, right? So you can't just sit there and expect, oh, there's 4 banks coming to North Carolina, so of course I'm going to get an interview there. No way. Like that's just not going to happen, right? Because there's too much competition for some of these things. So you should be finding a happy medium between what works. So in terms of outreach, like I said earlier, figure out who are the parts of recruiting teams for UNC at these universities, at these banks, and go reach out to them. And then on the other banks, go make your own list. Be organized. For every bank, create a spreadsheet, or create one spreadsheet, one Excel, but every bank has like its own tab, and just write in there, hey, these are all the analysts I've met. These are all the associates I've met. What's the conversation like? You know, and track, be very organized. Because look, at the end of the day, you are all going to go work at one firm. It's not like you're going to work at 15, internships at the same time. So the point is, you've built enough relationships that one, if you want to re-recruit at the end of this, one is during the recruitment process, you have good relationships and you have enough looks at different firms. Number 2, if you want to re-recruit, you can go back to the same relationships and say, hey, guess what? We met last year. I've been working at this bank. I would love to work. It's been in San Francisco, but I'd love to be in New York. I noticed you're in New York. I'd love to kind of, do that. Or I've been working in healthcare. I actually want to do technology. And so that's why I'm reaching out to you. Whatever your reasons are, it helps you build that kind of bridge for future years, right? So that's sort of the dual impact of sort of networking. So the first is the outreach. Like I said, be very creative in your outreach. The second piece is the communication. Give me a reason to respond to your email. Like, you would be surprised how many emails I get. Oh, I went to Chicago for my business school, and I'd get so many emails saying, oh, I went to Chicago. I noticed you went to Chicago, I'd love to connect. I'm like, that's it. Like, so does 200 other people usually email me from Chicago, right? So tell me like, hey, I am, Beckett, I'm part of this club. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I noticed with your background that you're at GS working in Fig. I really like Fig for X, Y, and Z reasons. If it would be great if I could spend 5 minutes on the phone. Again, it's not like rocket science, but you would be surprised how many people don't do it because they just want to get through 100 emails at the same time. So the first piece is network outreach. The second piece is communication. And the third piece is the actual meeting. I treat those meetings as interviews because that is actually what it is, right? So you be prepared, ask follow-up questions, and just establish a good rapport with the people in that interview. So again, I will let me pause here again. Are there any questions on any of the things I've spoken about thus far?
There's just something I want to add in terms of networking. I think it's really important to kind of pinpoint who's like which group of people are like the most important to speak to. Like, for example, like at Goldman, like probably the most important people for a UNC student to reach out to is whoever's on the UNC recruiting team. Also, Kaushik could speak more about it because I believe he was also one. At Goldman, we have this thing called like bums, which are just like the staffers of each group. Pretty much they run all the administrative stuff for the group. They run recruiting, they do all the super days. And so if you could speak to, a lot of the staffers throughout Goldman who are doing super days, that gives you an edge in terms of getting an interview, them even interviewing you at a super day. So I think that's another thing you could do. But
yeah, no, great point.
But the hard work is finding the right people. So that comes through networking with the right people, them giving you the right information. So
exactly. Yeah, I think that's right. And there's no like shortcut. It's not like someone will give you a list of like, here are the one person you need to reach out to every single firm. That's just not how life is, right? So I think if you go reach out to an analyst and you had a good relationship with that analyst, the analyst will say, hey, I like you. I want you to be successful. So here's another 2 people you should talk to in the firm, right? So that's how this sort of builds upon itself. And there's going to be firms that you don't have good relationships with, right? Just the nature of the process. So don't be too hard on yourself. If you reach out to 10 banks, maybe 5 of them you end up having good relationships with. Again, this is sort of a numbers game at that point. And hopefully that's helpful. I just shared a couple more things on LinkedIn. And as far as other resources, I think someone asked about that. Okay, let's keep moving on the slides. The next area I wanted to cover with you guys is interviews. So having done, I would say probably, I think I said this on another call. I think we had I've probably done, I definitely know over 2,000, maybe it's even over that in terms of interviews, just because it's just such an important piece of what we build as an organization. I mean, when you're in as a recruiting lead, right? You have to sort of be in a lot of these interviews, even though you're not doing all the interviews, because it's really important for us to hire the best people. So I think every place I've been, and with now Elevate, where we have our own recruiting sort of channel, it's important for me that the talent fit is always right. So in the interview piece, I would hit on two distinct areas. One is the behavioral side. I'm sure you guys have heard about some of this stuff already. There's sort of 7 or 8 main things that we try to get across in our interviews. Number 1, table stakes, nailing your pitch. That's the first, I'm going to call him Beckett again, but he did a really good job in terms of nailing his pitch. I'm sure you all would do the same thing, but I think that's the great first opportunity for you to make a good impression, right? So that will really set the tone for the rest of the conversation. Then obviously common questions, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? The challenge here isn't that you don't know what questions you're going to get asked. The challenge is how do you come up with the 4 or 5 most important stories that show them more about yourself in the whole process. And then what are your weaknesses? Obviously, also important. I would ask multiple variations of this question, right? So what is feedback you received? How would you change about where you work? What areas of improvement? Again, different ways to do this. Other things, right? We also ask a lot of situational questions where it would be like, oh, well, tell me about a time where there was a conflict on a team, or how did you handle sort of multiple deadlines, or if this was going on, if 2 MDs were asking you to do something, how would you do it? Or if a client calls you on a Friday night and there's no MD in the office, what would you do? So we really want to get a sense around judgment on how you'd handle these situations. Again, those are all part of this behavioral fit type of thing. The key here is just getting 5 or 6 stories that have depth to them, and be ready to answer multiple layers of questions there. The next area is technicals, although Screen is froze. Okay. Technical questions. So what types of questions you guys would get asked there is, why finance? Why will you be a good analyst? What are you tracking in the market? Why this firm? As well as a whole host of technical questions. This last bullet is about 20% of the interview. The rest of this is the 80% of the interview, right? So I would really focus on, yes, doing the technical stuff, but really getting all the other stuff done in the appropriate way. I'm going to skip the higher view thing. Investment banking technicals, I think we're going to skip for now in the interest of time. Let me see. Where do you guys want to go from here? So I have a few more slides at the end, but I want to make sure there's ample time for questions. So I will again pause to see if there's questions. Justin.
Hey, I just wanted to ask real quick. So, excuse me. Sorry about that. I just wanted to ask, in regards, you talked about it briefly earlier, but in regards to networking and building those relationships, continuing them along your career path, what do you think is the best way to ensure the longevity of the relationships that I'm making in my freshman year and continuing those on? Sorry about that.
That's me.
All right. And continue those on like throughout the process, because I know I've networked with a bunch of people my freshman year already. And I want to make sure I can continue to make those relationships fruitful like throughout my career. And my other question to that was, when do you think is the right time to leverage those relationships and make them work for you? Because there's obviously a personal side to it, but it is a business relationship. And when do you think is the right time to use that as leverage?
Yeah, look, I think when you're in a recruiting process, I think it's much more transactional than when you're outside of a recruiting process, right? So like to your point, these relationships that you're building right now, I would just treat them as ongoing relationships at a particular firm or with a particular individual that you can sort of access throughout the rest of your of your time at UNC. So my approach to relationship as far as this goes, one is just being really organized. Make a list of who you've talked to and what you've spoke to them about, right? So I think that's just sort of something you should do for your own sake, and sort of see how you can also add value, right? So let's say you're a freshman, and they tell you something like, hey, we have this fund and we're investing in, healthcare, whatever. And then you put up alerts on your system that says, hey, tell me about healthcare deals, or you ask them like, hey, is there something in healthcare that I could help you with? Again, if you're looking for jobs and stuff, like see if you can add value, or be like, hey, if you're looking for, X, Y, and Z things at UNC, I can try to connect you to these places. So this especially works for private equity and venture capital, less so maybe for investment banking, but try to find ways to add value such that it becomes so natural for when you're asking for something that they just automatically like offer up, right? So that's kind of what I would say, number one. Number two, if you're already starting to build relationships, with like, Raymond James or, JP Morgan or some of these banks, like keep them warm, right? Write down what you guys talked about. And every couple months, how you would leave off the conversations by saying, hey, if Justin, you and I were having, hey, Kaushik, I really appreciate your advice around networking X, Y, and Z. I will really take that to heart. And do you mind if I just kept in touch with you, updated you on how my process is going or how my career search is going? And usually the answer is yes. No one's going to say no. And then you just sort of use that as an in. But then when you email them every couple months, make sure it's like something relevant. Either, hey, I have an update. I got this internship this summer, so I'm super excited about it. I wanted to let you know because your advice has been really helpful. Or, hey, I noticed we talked about healthcare. I saw these 3 deals that happened in the Southeast. I thought they might be interesting to you. I just want to flag them to you or whatever. So anything like that where you can add value, that's not just about you. It's not just about, oh, I need help or I need this. Can you connect me to this or whatever? It's just like people are going to stop responding to that, right? At some point. And then lastly, like keep building on that, right? So like I said, if you start with 100 people or reach out, you may end up speaking to only 20 people. And of those, only 10 people will even want to have those relationships and keep them forward. Cultivate those and they will help you out in the long run. So they may not immediately lead to an internship, but they sort of, they will get there eventually. And if it's at a certain bank, when recruiting is going to kick off. So I think you were saying your first year, but when second year around this time or a couple months before this, then let's accelerate those conversations again. Hey, we talked as a freshman. Now I'm sort of on the recruiting process. Is there other people that I need to know? But don't leave too much of a break between those. So periodically go out to them with updates. but it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be like, oh, can you tell me 5 people I should be speaking to? It could just be like, hey, nice, hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good spring. I saw these 3 deals come across that I thought we'd find interesting given what we talked about. So yeah, if you have some time over the next couple of weeks, I'd love to have a 10-minute Zoom with you to give you an update on how things are going. If not, I totally understand. We can do it when you have some time. So it's just like casual stuff, not a lot of pressure. But when you are in recruiting, then you got to amp it up. Then you got to be like, okay, I want to get on the phone. Let's get on the phone. Let's do it. And from a professional's perspective, they're also more willing to do that because they've been directed by the recruiting team that they have to start talking to people because they want to hire people, right? So I think that just mindset shifts a little bit, and you should be aware of that. Okay, it was more of like a comprehensive answer to that question. Hopefully that's helpful. Justin?
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Yeah, you got it. You're absolutely welcome. Alvin, good to see you. I remember you from I think it was the Tullahan or Evercore event, maybe, or
I think the restructuring one.
Okay, cool. All right, excellent. Very cool. Well, good to see you back. And any other questions that people have? I thought there was a hand raised. Oh, Juan Luis, I think I remember your name as well. You would reach. We'd connected on LinkedIn, I think, at some point, right?
Yeah. How are you doing, Kaushik?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Great.
I actually have a question for you.
Okay.
So I'm actually preparing right now for I'm going through a process for a private equity but it's like for a small externship. I don't know if you have any experience with externships. It's like a 2-week externship before the junior internship.
Okay.
So I just want to know if you had like any specific advice for the technicals on that side. I mean, besides like the 400 IB questions, I guess. And also just, I mean, going over the webpage, your current deals and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is interview for a PE company for an externship before the thing. Okay. I like generally the idea of it. I think 2 weeks is like, it's like such a small time. So it's sort of like, we don't know what you'll actually get out of it, I suppose, but I think it's a good way to just kind of get your foot in the door. And also potentially, if buy-side recruiting happens early, you can always say, hey, I did this internship, or externship, and that got me first like thinking about PE or whatever. I think generally, I would say, as far as the interview goes, I'd say 3 things. Number 1, tell me about why this fund is interesting to you. So like, go into their portfolio, make sure you understand their strategy, right? So a lot of the firms, right, they have like a consumer arm and then they have a technology arm, and you come in and the interviewee, the candidate's like, oh, I know you've done, 5 portfolio companies in consumer and then 3 in technology. And they completely miss the point that it's like, B2B technology and sort of the whole retail dynamic that the investors like, interested in. So my point is try to figure out what their strategy is. And sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not, but sort of have a view on it. Like, hey, I think it's interesting that you guys have done X, Y, and Z. I noticed you guys did these deals. I think that's really interesting to me because of X, Y, and Z. So really, really, because that's what differentiates you for why Juan Luis and why our firm, right? Not just that you're going to be the same for every single firm. So why do we want you to have you on our team? I think that's important. So number 1, that sort of fit dynamic. Number 2, sort of on the technical side, I think it's a little bit not as much like an investment banking interview. It's a little bit more like paper. I don't know what firm you're talking to and how sophisticated it is, but usually for private equity, it's usually a little bit more of like a LBO type interview. Versus like, tell me about accretion dilution or things like that. But at the same time, I think generally they want, valuation, cash flows. How do you think about DCF LBO versus, comps and things like the basic stuff, so I think that's kind of stuff. They may do a paper LBO with you, right? Where they might say, hey, let's take an example, this company A that sort of has 100 million in revenue, 40% EBITDA margin, X, Y, and Z, capital structure or CapEx, and then sort of what's the 5-year growth rate. And then let's go through sort of a high level LBO. That's very possible. So be prepared for that. And then probably the third area. So the first piece was on why the firm, the second piece on the technical piece. And then I'd say the third piece is like, just what are you going to like, what are your skills? Like all the behavioral stuff, right? I can come in, hit the ground running, whatever you guys need. I know what PE is. You got to establish that I know what PE is. Number 2, because last thing they want is to have someone come in, don't know what PE is, or effectively a liability for the rest of the team. And like, they have to sort of explain to them what a sim is or explain to them what a data room is, right? That's not what we want, right? So I think just making it clear that, hey, I got it. This is kind of what what I know of the space. And I think I'm happy to help wherever, but I'm happy to help on the diligence side. I'm happy to help with building the model. I'm happy to work on sort of any of the legal aspects or whatever it is. So demonstrating understanding of the job, especially for private equity, important. So is that helpful, Juan, Luis?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
That was
Okay,
really
so
helpful.
we have time for maybe one more question. Let me go back to the slides and see if we can cover one more thing while we're at it. Okay. Succeeding as an intern. Okay, let me hit on this because I do get asked about this a lot. Succeeding as an intern, you know, what are the biggest mistakes I see? Number one, your reputation is paramount. Like, it doesn't matter if you come from UNC or from, you know, North Carolina State or whatever, right? I think it's just important. What is the quality of your work? That's going to determine whether you get a return offer or not. So number one, attention to detail and sort of just doing a good job. Again, you're not going to make zero mistakes, but let's diminish the number of mistakes you make by whatever system you have, right? Like I said earlier, you know, whatever it is. Oh, you know what? Before I actually continue this, my team has specifically asked me, I think Alvin, some of you guys who've been on these calls before, I've asked similar things off, but they want for you guys to do to do a 5-star testimonial saying that you took this IBPE training. Again, it helps our team as we grow, right, as a platform and stuff like that. Again, totally out of your own like, if you want to do it, but it would help us for you guys to do that on this thing. So I just shared the link. I'll share that again at the end of it. But back to this, being ultra responsive. That's the other thing. Okay, so a lot of times my analysts, they will get an email and then the MD will ask, hey, where's this deck or where's this thing? And they really want to do a good job, but the real answer they don't have, but their associate has. So they will just wait for the associate to reply, and then like a whole day would go by and the MD sitting here being like, what the heck? Like, why don't I have a response? So the better way to do that is just saying, hey, I'm working on it. I'm tracking this down. I will let you know as soon as I know where it is. So at least like the responsiveness is what really matters when it comes to this type of stuff. Okay. The next thing is ownership of something. Again, I'm not going to go into this, but the best analysts and the best summer interns we've had are the ones that come in and start taking ownership of things. Say, hey, where can I help? What can I do? Where can I actually lead this? Obviously, don't start with leading a big, like, you know, RMT model or something, but start with something small. But over time, the goal is you take on individual responsibilities that become something bigger. Communicate. You're going to have every single day, you're going to be faced with 3 competing deadlines, right? Three VPs want you to do something. So just make sure you know what the order of operations are. Team player, curiosity. Curiosity actually helps you in buy-side recruiting more than you think. Because what differentiates people in buy-side recruiting is not the ones that can just spit out, you know, their models, is the ones that can talk about why did this deal happen, right? Like why did this company buy this company? What were they trying to do? Why would you do as an investor? So try to get out of the minutia of the modeling and try to understand what's going on in a deal. Being organized, really important. Resourcefulness, efficiency, blah, 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 making an impact of those around you. And the last thing I'm gonna leave you guys with is that your goal in your careers team is just really to find a combination of 3 things. I think I talked about this earlier. What are you uniquely good at? So I want you all to find things in your career that you are the best in the world at. Again, over the course of your career, not day one, because that's where you will excel. And that's where you're really, really going to find true career, fulfillment, right? So find the things that you're the best in the world at. What are your strengths? Number 2, what are your interests and passions, right? I really like technology. I really like investing. I really like clean tech. I really like this. Why do you like it? Why does that interest you? Do you wake up in the morning, get excited to go open TechCrunch and read all the news? Do you get excited to go read whatever? That is how you define what excites you. Because no matter fake it till you make it is going to make you sort of get excited. Again, these are things you may not have already. That's okay. But your goal in your career should be to sort of build that. And then number 3, how do you define impact? For some of you, it's going to be, I want to make the most money. That's going to change. Once it's like in life, right? Once you have more of something, you don't want that thing anymore. Just like you're like, oh, my goal is to get into UNC, into the business school. You get in, you're like, oh, I don't want it anymore. I want to get this next thing. And you go to the next thing, like, I don't want that anymore. I want to do the next thing, right? So figure out for yourself, what is that fulfillment driver? What's that definition of success? And in my experience, it always ends up being, like legacy building stuff, right? That where we can think about more than yourself and just kind of not just take and sort of build your legacies for yourself. And I think that's where, you know, I highly recommend you start thinking about over the course of your year. That said, you know, short-term goals, you all need to, you know, pay for college. You all need to, you know, make good livings. You all need to, like, you know, get good experiences. And so as a result, you know, pursuing these careers will give you exactly that, right? In some sense. But really important, just do the careers that you guys want to do, right? And are actually going to be good at, and do the diligence around it. Okay. So we've said a lot. I've spoken a lot. Hopefully this has been helpful to everyone. You know, the goal is to really increase accessibility, increase the access to information, not just these sessions. I think I do these sessions because I enjoy kind of teaching the next gen, and kind of have the goal is next year, you know, as some of your leaders are going to be on some of these panels or have been in the past, you guys will be successful, and then you'll be on the other side and you'll be teaching the other people how to sort of, you know, be successful, and then, you know, do the same thing on the PE side and so on, right? So that's the goal here, is can we build a culture and ecosystem of people sort of helping the next generation out, right? So I think, anyway, on that note, I will stop and, okay, I've shared my LinkedIn. I'm going to reshare this testimonial thing. It takes like 10 seconds, fill it out, and then I'll turn it back over to Jacques and Thomas and their team. Really excited to kind of, you know, be back, you know, speaking to you guys here. Hopefully, you know, we'll be able to do it in person in the near future. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll see you guys on the upcoming events and stuff. So Thomas, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, Kaushik, this was super helpful, even for me, Jacques. But yeah, once again, thank you for all your time. Hopefully for everyone on the call here, it was just as helpful. And please continue leveraging the Elevate resource. I know when I was going through recruiting, it was super helpful. Even I use the Connect resource to, you know, connect with, you know, seniors, you know, that are incoming bankers. So it's super helpful. And, you know, that's why we put in the listserv. So
Yeah,
continue
guys.
to leverage
Excellent.
it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And then if next week we have on, I know for some of the underclassmen, but Jacques and Thomas, I think it's more relevant for your class and the juniors. But if some of the underclassmen want to do it, we have a lot of questions around MBAs and how they fit into like investment banking or private equity careers. So we're actually partnered with Wharton's MBA school. There's other set of partnerships that we have, as well as we have on speakers from Blackstone, GS, TMT, Lindsay Goldberg, and Morgan Stanley, and one other firm. So if you guys are interested in hearing about how these people think about MBAs in their careers, I think my team has already sent it to you, Thomas and team. If you guys can share that with your seniors and juniors, we'll have some spots for underclassmen as well. If you're interested, if you really are interested, let us know. But yeah, so we'll see you then. And then after that, we have that diversity panel in 2 weeks. And then after that, we're going to do a lot of firm specific stuff. Okay. So on that note, I will let you guys go and have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
Thank you, Kaushik. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Welcome.
Every day.